45 years ago, a middle-aged couple living in the quiet Oak Park neighborhood of Chicago vanished without a trace during a harsh winter, leaving behind their red brick house and a fireplace still smoldering with warm ashes. Authorities suspected foul play, but no bodies or signs of a break-in were found, and the investigation quickly hit a dead end. Yet for 3 decades, a retired police officer could not forget the strange glow of the fire in that house that night, convinced that a perfectly concealed crime lay behind the disappearance. Then one day, when railway workers in South Chicago accidentally unearthed a metal box engraved with the initials CD, a long-buried secret seemed to resurface. Before we dive into this chilling case spanning over 30 years, let us know where you're watching from. And if you love true crime stories, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Chicago, winter of 1980. Snow blanketed every rooftop and the wind from Lake Michigan howled through the quiet streets of the Oak Park residential area, where yellow streetlights cast their glow onto empty sidewalks. At the end of Maple Avenue, the Danner family's red brick house stood silent amid the white fog. Charles Danner, 58, a stern former railroad police officer, with a habit of reading the morning paper and turning off the lights promptly at 10 p.m. His wife, Evelyn, 54, a music teacher at Lincoln Elementary, still remembered by students for the lavender scent on her sweaters. On Friday night, the neighbor across the street, Helen Murray, while taking out the trash, saw the fireplace's glow reflecting on the Danner's window and heard faint arguing, harsh, indistinct tones that abruptly stopped. She assumed it was a spat about money and went back inside, thinking nothing of it. The next morning, snow fell heavier, covering the Danners' front steps. The Chicago Tribune still untouched at their door, and no smoke rose from the chimney. Murray called, but no one answered. All Saturday, the neighborhood remained eerily still. By Sunday, when St. Paul's church bells rang for morning service, the pew where the Danners always sat was empty, a first in 17 years. That afternoon, their only son, Michael Danner, 28, drove up in his old Buick. The door was locked, curtains drawn, no lights, no sound. He knocked on the front door, then the back, softly calling, "Mom, Dad," but heard only the wind whistling through bare branches. On the steps, his footprints stood out in the snow, mingling with a faint, older drag mark. He stood still for a long moment, staring at the dark fireplace window, where the warm glow had once flickered every winter night. Now only darkness and cold filled the space, as if the house had been forgotten by time. The wind howled through leafless trees, swirling fine snow over every trace. Michael turned away, his breath blending into the white mist, a heavy sense of unease settling in. By 7:45 p.m., he was at the Oak Park police station, his voice trembling but firm. "My parents are missing." That night, snow kept falling, covering the path to the red brick house at the end of Maple Avenue. At dawn on Monday, Missing Persons Report #MP8147 was officially filed. Sergeant Raymond Hall, head of the investigative team, arrived at the scene at 8:20 a.m. He wrote in his black leather notebook, the first line, "2 adults missing." No signs of forced entry. The search began. Police split into 2 groups. One combed the Maple Avenue neighborhood. The other checked churches, gas stations, and hospitals within a 10-mile radius. Snow fell heavily, fresh layers obscuring any tracks. Neighbors said they hadn't seen the Danners leave or heard a car start. Helen Murray, the first to report, insisted, "I only saw the fireplace glow on Friday night." After that, silence. Another witness, Henry Given, owner of a nearby corner store, recalled seeing Charles that afternoon buying cigarettes and a Chicago Sun-Times. After that, no one saw them. Holt walked the house, eyes scanning every detail. The temperature dropped to -10 degrees C, wind whistling through bare trees, muffling sounds in a blanket of ice. Snow covered the back path. No footprints, only a faint groove where snow was packed flat. On the living room window, he noticed small droplets running down the glass. possibly from lingering fireplace heat or humidity from a recently opened door. He noted, fireplace active on 11:15 night. No smoke on 11:16. Last firelight seen at 1000 p.m. At the station, Lieutenant Marjorie Lane checked all Cook County hospitals. No one named Danner had been admitted. Police called Michigan to verify friends. Michael said his parents visited. Nobody knew the couple. By afternoon, news spread, and a few Chicago Tribune reporters arrived at the house but were asked to leave. Oak Park was a quiet middle-class area. A couple vanishing in winter caused more confusion than fear. That afternoon, Hall led a small team along the Des Plaines River. 2 miles from the Danner house, ice lined the banks. Bare trees stood on both sides, and only the crunch of boots on snow broke the silence. They used long poles to probe shallow waters, finding nothing but mud and debris. The sun set early, light fading, and Hall stood staring at the dark river, his breath forming faint clouds. He scribbled, "No traces. Expand search radius." That evening, police returned to the Danner house for further inspection. The fireplace was cold, the living room freezing. On the table sat 2 cold coffee mugs and a half-folded newspaper. In the garage, Hall found both family cars, a silver Ford LTD and an old station wagon still parked, engines cold, tires unmarked. He paused, flashlight sweeping over the dust-covered hoods. "If they went to Michigan, how?" A young officer muttered, "Maybe they took a cab." Hall didn't reply, only stared at a trail of footprints leading to the back door. Some clear, then lost in fresh snow. He measured them, noting stride length and shoe size, comparing them to Charles's records. They didn't match. As they left, the clock read 900 p.m. Wind grew stronger, snowflakes stinging like needles. Hall glanced back at the red brick house. Police lights casting shadows on the walls, highlighting old soot stains on the chimney. He whispered almost to himself, "No one leaves here without a trace. We just haven't looked in the right place yet." That night, the first report was sent to the Cook County Sheriff's Office. The conclusion read, "No vehicle found, no location clues. Status missing, cause unknown." Outside, snow kept falling, burying all footprints on the small street. Under the dim streetlight, the Danner house sank into silence, cold and perfect, as if no one had ever lived there. Sergeant Raymond Hall returned to the house on Tuesday morning, bringing 2 forensic technicians and a Cook County crime scene photographer. He opened his notebook, writing, "First examination, 416 Maple Avenue, Oak Park. 2 adults missing. Status undetermined." The sky was heavy gray, snow falling lightly, settling in thin layers on the investigators' thick coats. The air outside was so still that the click of the door lock echoed sharply. The front door, secured with a Yale lock, showed no signs of tampering. Windows were shut tight, only a layer of frost clinging inside. Hall led the way, removing his gloves, lightly touching the living room's wooden table. Fine dust coated it evenly, except for a few smooth patches where something had been moved. He ordered a full panorama shot, then approached the fireplace, the house's only light source in the dark. In the ashtray, embers were still warm, topped with a thick tar-like black layer. A faint burnt smell lingered, sharp and heavy, making a technician cough. "Collect ash samples, a 1, a 2, a 3, Holt ordered, eyes fixed on the hearth. On the bricks around, fresh soot stains, thin and even, suggested a long burning fire, not a brief one. On the coffee table, a Chicago Tribune from November 15th lay open to Metro News headlining a train accident in South Chicago. Nearby were reading glasses and 2 coffee mugs, one with a lipstick mark. The wall clock had stopped at 9:42, its second hand frozen mid-tick, as if someone had pulled the battery or power cut out at that moment. Hall tilted his head, listening. The house was utterly silent, save for the wind slipping through door cracks. He opened his notebook, writing, "No signs of break-in, no items disturbed, possible voluntary exit or coercion." As his flashlight swept the wooden floor, he paused. Under the coffee table was a dark round stain, partially wiped. He crouched, shining a UV light. Under the purple glow it speckled faintly. "Could be blood," he said softly, signaling a technician to swab it. "Surface cleaned with soap, but traces remain." In the kitchen, the sink held dried foam. A utility knife sat on the counter's edge. Its plastic handle cracked, blade rusted brown. Hall gloved, lifted it, asking, "Who leaves a tool like this in the kitchen?" The technician shook his head. Hall bagged it, labeling it Exhibit K1. The hand soap had a faint gasoline scent. On the shelf, bottles were neatly arranged except for an empty bottle of cleaner. "They cleaned thoroughly," he said, adding, "Attempted to erase traces, but not completely." They moved upstairs. The bedroom was tidy, bed made flat, blankets folded at perfect angles, pillows aligned. On Evelyn's vanity, makeup and perfume remained, but her wedding ring box was missing. A faint ring mark on the tablecloth. The closet was slightly ajar. No suitcases gone, clothes intact. Hall told the photographer, "Capture everything from this angle to the window." In Michael's room down the hall, the bed was unmade, the desk cluttered with mechanical papers and a brown leather notebook. Hall flipped it open, finding scattered notes on gear designs and a torn page. He didn't take it, only noted, "Possibly relevant, needs cross-checking." In the basement, a damp, smoky smell lingered. A small pile of ash sat in a corner, like embers spilled while cleaning the hearth. Hall knelt, touching it, powdery, sticky. He frowned. "Why does the ash smell like oil?" The technician found tiny metal fragments like pin shavings. All were bagged, labeled B2. As they left, Hall glanced at the living room again. Noon light filtered through the curtains, illuminating the table where the newspaper and mugs sat unchanged. Everything looked frozen in a moment of daily life, except for the absence of people, making the scene feel wrong. He turned to the technician, "Seal the entire ground floor, no entry without my order." Outside, Hall paused on the steps. Snow melted into slush under his boots. He looked at the bare trees. Smoke from a neighbor's chimney drifting thin and blue. In his notebook, he wrote the morning's final line. No break-in traces, warm ash, odd burnt smell. Possible blood stain wiped. Victim status unclear. Insufficient grounds for homicide. Conclusion. The police car left Maple Avenue, leaving the house silent in the snowy wind. Inside, the clock stayed stuck at 9:42, the last moment recorded before the house's time stopped. That noon, in a small interrogation room at the Oak Park Police Department, Michael Danner sat across from Sergeant Raymond Holt. Fluorescent light glared down on the metal table, reflecting Michael's clasped hands. He wore a gray turtleneck, dark pants, his frame slim, shoulders slightly hunched. He spoke evenly. No trembling, no pauses. A calm Holt recognized in those hiding something. "My parents went to Michigan to visit friends." "Left Saturday morning," Michael said, staring into the space ahead. Hall looked up. "What's the friend's name?" Michael answered instantly. "The Petersons. They have a cabin near Grand Haven," Holt wrote slowly. "Do you have their phone number?" "No, I think my dad did." After over 20 years of investigations, Hall had learned to listen not just to words, but to the pauses between them. Each time he asked a question, he let the silence linger just long enough. Michael handled those silences better than most. No blinking, no fidgeting. He only took deep breaths occasionally, as if rehearsing a prepared script. "You were the last to see them?" Hall asked. "Yes, Friday night we had dinner together. Mom made pot roast. I went to bed early. When I woke, they were gone. Did you hear anything unusual that night?" "No, just the wind." "The fireplace was burning late. Did you stoke it?" Michael looked up, his voice light as a breath. "Dad told me to burn some old papers, old railroad bills. I did it and went to bed." Holt set his notebook down, fingers tapping the table lightly. "Old papers." "Yes." He said he wanted to clear them out before leaving. "Did you keep any?" "No." He told me to burn them all. Holt signaled a technician to collect fireplace ash samples. When the preliminary report came, he read, "Mixed ash possibly containing organic material." He didn't say it aloud, but questions swirled. What organic material? Why burn it the last night they were seen? And why didn't their son find anything odd? Michael pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket and placed it on the table. "They left me this note," he said. The pale yellow paper had handwritten text. "Dear son, we're going to Michigan for a few days. Call your aunt if you need anything." Signed Charles and Evelyn. Hull read it once, then twice. The handwriting was nearly perfect, but the signatures were shaky, the pen strokes halting as if the writer's hand was unsteady. He asked, "Where did you find this note?" "On the kitchen table. They left it for me." "You recognize their handwriting, of course." "It's my mom's." Hull fell silent, folding the paper carefully. He'd seen many notes, farewells, suicide letters, fakes. He knew the feel of handwriting, mimicking another too neat, too slow, lacking instinct. A faint suspicion stirred, but he couldn't voice it yet. "Anyone else come to the house that day?" No strangers at our place." "Where were you Saturday morning?" "I slept till nearly noon. Then I went to a friend's to help fix a car, then came home. I thought they'd call when they got there." When hawked about the family's Ford Leltide, Michael hesitated. "Oh, they took it, didn't they? Hulked." "I think so," Michael replied. But when told both cars were still in the garage, he looked at his hand, saying softly, "I didn't notice. Maybe they borrowed a friend's car." Holt sensed the answer didn't fit, but had no evidence to challenge it. Later, Michael asked for a cigarette. Holt allowed it, sliding a pack of Lucky Strikes across. Michael lit one, smoke curling under the light, his voice low. "I know this sounds strange, but they needed a break. Dad was stressed about money. They liked Michigan, the quiet." Hull watched. No trembling, no clear deception. Just eyes, not quite sad, staring past him to somewhere distant. As the interrogation ended, Hull collected the notes. No major inconsistencies, no concrete evidence. Everything stayed within the bounds of a typical missing persons case. Before leaving, Holt said, "If your parents call, notify me immediately. We need to confirm they're safe." Michael nodded, stubbed out the cigarette, stood and said, "I hope so too, Sergeant." When the door closed, Holt sat alone for a few minutes. On the table the note remained, its odd signature faintly trembling under the light. He examined it with a magnifying glass, noting smudged ink on Evelyn. The pen paused, then continued unevenly. He wrote, "Signature possibly forged. Needs verification." Outside snow fell again. Through the interrogation room's small window, Hall saw the snow-covered parking lot. A young officer passed, carrying evidence bags, fireplace ash, the utility knife, the note, all labeled, neatly arranged. Like the way someone in that house tried to erase all traces. Hall felt colder than usual. He closed his notebook, whispering, "Nothing vanishes completely. We just haven't found where to look." The report concluded with his blue ink note. "Possible organic material in ash. Suspected forged note. Insufficient grounds for charges. Recommend monitoring subject Michael Danner." 2 days after the first interrogation, Sergeant Raymond Hull expanded the search, following Michael's claim about the Michigan trip. An Illinois map lay across his desk. Red dots tracing I-94, the highway skirting Lake Michigan toward Benton Harbor, where Michael said his parents had friends. Hull pointed at the map, telling Lieutenant Marjorie Lane, "If they left Saturday morning, someone at a gas station or toll camera should have seen them." Lane nodded, flipping her notebook, listing checkpoints with VHS tapes from the Department of Transportation, but it was 1980. Cameras were only at major bridges and tolls, low quality, stored on 36-hour magnetic tapes, then erased. Nothing remained. The team split into two. One group drove from Oak Park through Skoy up the highway, stopping at every gas station to ask staff. Night shift workers from November 15th and 16 shook their heads. No one recalled a middle-aged couple in a silver Ford. "Just truckers," one employee said. "No one like a teacher or cop." The other group went to Benton Harbor, checking guest lists at 3 Motel Lakeview Inn, Blue Harbor Lodge and Sleepy Dunes. No Charles or Evelyn Danner in the registers. No matching descriptions. Even the Ford Ltd. Illinois plate, BGM 271, never appeared in any parking lot. Holt called the station, asked Michael if his parents booked rooms in advance. When told the results were empty, Michael said over the phone, his voice steady. They might have changed plans mid-trip, maybe stopped to visit someone or stayed closer. The words sounded simple, but in Hall's mind they sparked doubt. If they changed plans, why not tell their son? And how did they leave with both cars still at home? That afternoon, he visited the mobile gas station where Charles had a credit account. The last transaction was November 14th, $8 at a station less than a mile from home. No further charges. Holt requested bank statements. The results were the same. No withdrawals, no new spending. He tapped his fingers on the desk, eyes fixed on the note. Last transaction before disappearance, November 14th, 1980. He sighed, adding, no financial activity after 11:15s. The next day, Hall drove to Benton Harbor with a young investigator. Snow lay thick, roads empty, trees casting long shadows on gray ice. Crossing the state line, he felt the futility of the trip, searching for a couple who might never have left the city. They stopped at a small dock by the lake, asking the keeper about a Chicago couple. The man shook his head, wrapping his scarf tighter. If they took a boat, the lake's frozen. No one goes out in this weather. Holt stared at the lead-gray water, thin ice cracking, wind biting through his collar. Every lead ended in silence. That evening they returned to Oak Park. Holt reported to Captain Carver, the unit head. No motel, no gas stations, no witnesses. They might never have left the house. Carver listened. Pensive, got evidence for that theory? Hall shook his head. Just a feeling. The captain replied, feelings don't convince a court. He initialed the report, ordering a pause on out-of-state searches until new evidence emerged. Back at his office, Hall opened the file, reading Michael's statement. They left Saturday morning around 8. Below he wrote in red ink, no witnesses confirm both vehicles in garage. No travel traces. He leaned back, staring at the wall map. I-94 stretching like a thread into the white void. Countless eyes and steps had searched that route, finding nothing but snow and emptiness. 2 days later, a small article appeared on page 3 of the Chicago Tribune. Couple vanish in winter storm. The piece less than a column read Charles and Evelyn Danner, Oak Park residents, reported missing since 11:15. Police believe they may have met an accident in the blizzard while traveling to Michigan. Search continues. Hall read it, folded it, and filed it. He knew those lines could quietly close the case, as labeling it a storm accident stopped deeper inquiries. But in his mind, the image of the red brick house with 2 cold coffee mugs lingered like a paused film frame. Everything halted. No resolution. He wrote a final note. Leads exhausted. Accident theory lacks basis. Monitor sun. Unusually calm demeanor. Outside night fell fast. Streetlights glowed on icy pavement, reflecting on the station's windows. Holt stood, poured cold coffee, watching the faint steam rise. No evidence, no bodies, only absence, he muttered. Hoarse from the cold. No one vanishes completely on this road. Snow just hides better than we think. 3 days after the fruitless Michigan trip, Sergeant Raymond Hull returned to Maple Avenue. That morning the snow stopped, the air dry and cold, the sky a low silver-gray sheet. He brought 2 technicians and an old Cook County metal detector. If they didn't go anywhere, he told Lane, stepping from the patrol car, the answer's still here. The Danner house stood silent in thin fog. The thick snow on the roof had frozen, reflecting pale light. Holt ordered the backyard cordoned off. Yellow tape stretched around the wooden fence. He directed the team to scan every square meter from the wall's edge to the garden's end. The detector hummed steadily, pinging with each hit on a nail or screw. The ground was frozen hard, requiring small shovels to break it apart. Over an hour later, a technician shouted, "This spot's softer, boss." Hull knelt beside a patch near the east fence. The thin snow layer was cracked, revealing darker, wetter soil beneath. He tapped his shovel. It thudded dully. "Dig 1/2 meter deeper," he said. They carefully scooped out cold, sticky earth. After a few shovelfuls, the blade hit something hard. The technician picked up a brown glass shard, thick like from a broken bottle's base. Nearby, mixed in the soil, were small grey charcoal flecks. Hull, gloved, grabbed a handful, crushing it lightly. The flecks crumbled. Reeking of old smoke, he asked, "Who burned something here?" One replied, "Maybe trash." They dug wider, finding nothing else. No bones, no cloth, no large metal, just clearly disturbed soil. Unnatural. Hull crouched, fingers tracing the pit's edge. "Someone dug and refilled this," he said quietly, "but they knew how to clean it up." He ordered photos of the area and bagged soil samples in nylon. After the survey, Hull circled to the garage. The grey metal door was slightly ajar, the interior dim. He swept his flashlight around. The space was cluttered. Toolboxes, oil cans, rags, paint cans, a sharp gasoline smell. On the concrete floor, a long streak ran from the wall to the door as if liquid had spilled and been wiped. He knelt, sniffing. Strong gasoline odor. "Take a sample," he ordered. A technician used a pipette to collect moisture from the tile cracks. Holt stood, shining his light across the floor. Near the door were faint shoe prints, not fresh, but clear enough to show tread patterns. He measured them with a metal ruler, size 10. "Michael wears a 10, right?" he asked. Lane nodded. "Per the file?" "Yes." Holt noted it, photographed the prints, and compared them to Michael's shoes from the previous interrogation. Black leather, rubber soles with matching treads. A perfect match. When Michael was called to confirm, he arrived on time, still calm, sweater neat, eyes cold. Holt pointed to the concrete. "Recognize these prints?" Michael glanced down, shrugging slightly. "Probably mine. I cleaned the garage last week. Used some gas to wipe oil stains." "Why use gas?" "Dad always did." "Oil sticks." "Water doesn't work." "Did you spill much?" "Maybe, I don't recall." His voice was even, not defensive, not panicked, but showed no trace of concern for his missing parents. Holt jotted notes, eyes fixed on that expressionless face. "Did you burn trash in the yard?" "No, I just ran leaves. That soil's soft, because I planted flowers in October. Flowers in late October when it's -10 degrees. Michael gave a faint smile. "I'm not good with weather. I did it for Mom." Holt stopped writing, staring at him for a long moment. The exchange ended there. As Michael left, Holt said to Lane, "Notice how every answer makes sense, but none of it feels true." That evening, Holt returned to the garage alone for a final check. He swept his flashlight along the wall, light glinting off the slick concrete. Near the door, he spotted parallel scratches about 10 centimeters long, like marks from dragging something heavy. He photographed them, measured their path straight toward the door. Nothing concrete, just faint marks, but they kept him awake that night. In the November 23rd report, Holt wrote, "Backyard search found disturbed soil with charcoal and glass shards. No organic material. Garage gasoline spill. Size 10 shoe prints match Michael Danner's shoes. Floor scratches lead to door. When questioned, subject claimed he was cleaning. All answers logical but emotionless." He closed the notebook, looking out the office window at snow-covered parked cars. Street lights cast a weak orange glow on the ice, mirroring the faint yellow of the fireplace ash in that house. Ash he still didn't know the truth about. Hull whispered almost to himself, "You can scrub floors, wipe blood, bury trash, but the ground always remembers." 2 weeks after the backyard search, Claire's December's first heavy snows fell. Sergeant Raymond Hull couldn't let go of the Danner disappearance. Something in the story didn't add up. No bodies, no crime evidence, but no signs they left voluntarily either. Each morning he visited the records room, reopening the report, rereading his final note, all answers logical but emotionless. That logic kept him sleepless. On December 3rd, Hall requested 6 months of Charles Danner's bank statements from Illinois Trust and Savings. A week later, a thick yellow envelope arrived. He flipped through routine expenses, utilities, groceries, small donations to Evelyn's school. Then the last entry, November 18, 1980, $35,000 cash withdrawal, Oak Park branch. 2 days after the couple was reported missing, Hall frowned. He requested the original withdrawal slip. The slip, preserved in a clear plastic sleeve, bore Charles Danner's familiar signature. But Holt spotted something off. A slight tremble in the C, the final stroke veering as if the writer mimicked a sample. "Who made the transaction?" he asked. The bank clerk, a middle-aged woman, recalled. "A young man about 30, brown hair, tall glasses. I assumed he was family. He had a power of attorney." She paused, looking at the slip. "We kept a copy, but I don't recall his face." Holtz retrieved the power of attorney, typed, signed by Charles, witnessed by Evelyn Danner. He leaned back, tapping the desk. 2 missing people, 1 son and $35,000 gone. He called Mutual Life of Illinois, where Charles had a life insurance policy. The clerk flipped through files. "Yes, we received a claim for death benefits on November 18th. Filed by, let me see, Michael Danner, the beneficiary." Holt's throat went dry. "He filed by mail. Yes, with a copy of a death certificate from Mercy Hospital." "Mercy Hospital. No one died there. Could be an error." The claim was rejected for lacking official death confirmation. He hung up, taking a deep breath. A missing persons case turned into an insurance claim in 3 days. That wasn't coincidence. He ordered a temporary freeze on Michael Danner's accounts. Result, the $35,000 was withdrawn in cash. No transfers, no serial numbers recorded. The money vanished like its owners. That afternoon, Hall brought the documents, withdrawal slip, insurance claim, Charles's signatures, to Cook County's forensic unit. The technician shook his head. "We can only compare by eye. We don't have a dedicated handwriting lab for forgery confirmation. You'd need the FBI." Hall knew that process could take months. If it was even processed without a criminal case classification, he stared at the paper under the light, feeling like he was touching a lie printed in black ink. The next morning, he brought the signatures to meet Michael Danner. The meeting was brief. In the small interrogation room, no lawyer. Holt placed the withdrawal slip on the table, asking bluntly, "Know about this withdrawal?" Michael glanced at it, frowning slightly, then said, "No, Dad didn't tell me anything. Maybe he needed cash for the trip." "Do you know how much?" "Not sure. I didn't handle their finances." "What about this insurance claim?" Holt showed another paper, pointing to the sender's name. Michael raised an eyebrow. "Someone's impersonating me." "Definitely not me. I never heard of it." His voice was calm, but as he spoke, his hands on the table clasped tighter, thumbs rubbing together. Hall noticed, said nothing more, and packed the file away. He knew he had nothing but suspicions. That evening in his office he sat late, rereading the first interrogation transcript. Michael's words stood out. They left Saturday morning around 8. He underlined each line, then looked at the bank statement. The transaction occurred Tuesday, 2 days after they went to Michigan. He muttered, "If they left, who withdrew the money? Who filed the claim?" The next morning, Hull submitted a preliminary report to Captain Carver. He said this could be fraud, even murder for profit. Carver looked at him long, then replied, "Got a body?" "No, got proof of forgery, not yet. Without something solid, this case gets shelved." Holt stayed silent. He knew it was true. The law needed evidence, not instincts. By the end of the month, Holt sent an official request to the FBI for handwriting analysis support. A week later, the file was returned with a note. "Insufficient criminal basis. Additional evidence required." Hall folded the letter, tucked it into his coat pocket, and stepped into the hallway. Snow fell outside the window, thick like ash. He looked at the streetlights casting light on the icy ground, feeling like he stood before a locked door. Truth on the other side, but the key was held by someone who had wiped away all traces. The December 1980 report was brief. Charles Danner's account withdrawn $35,000 on 11/18s. Life insurance claim filed same day. Beneficiary Michael Danner. Suspected forged handwriting. No evidence, no bodies. Investigation paused. Status missing. Cause unknown. Hall closed the notebook, leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. In that silence he heard the wind outside the window. Long, cold and steady, like the slow breath of a case growing cold. The winter of 1981 passed slowly, cold and damp, much like the case Sergeant Raymond Hall still clung to. For months he kept calling hospitals, law enforcement in Michigan, Wisconsin, even Indiana, hoping someone had seen the Danners or found bodies in a river. No call yielded results. No one saw them at gas stations, hotels, or toll booths. No phone records showed out-of-state calls from the Danner house after November 15th. They seemed to have vanished entirely. No voice, no trace, no shadow. In his office, the thin file for case Memory MP 747 teetered on a stack of thicker, newer cases. Daily Hall opened it, adding brief notes, persistent but meager. No new witnesses, rechecked banks, no new transactions. Michael Danner moves frequently but stays in Illinois. That was all he had. In late February, he received a report from the forensics lab. The ash samples from the Danner house couldn't be analyzed further. "We lack the equipment," the lab chief said over the phone, voice weary. "To know what's in it, you'd need a state lab, but it's costly." Hall asked how much. "About $800. Not in this year's budget." The answer silenced him. For a small local unit like Oak Park, $800 was enough to stall anything. The ash was resealed, labeled Evidence 11A, and shelved in the back of the storage room where flickering tube lights and thick dust reigned. Hall didn't give up immediately. He requested to redig the Danner backyard, citing the disturbed soil and odd charcoal found earlier. The request was returned after 2 weeks. No legal basis. Additional search warrant required. Captain Carver called him in, speaking softly but firmly. "Rye, I know you believe something's there, but we can't dig up a citizen's property on a hunch. No bodies, no witnesses, no crime signs. This will just drain the department's budget," Hall replied, voice. "Sir, the scary part is there's nothing. If they left, why, the withdrawn money, the unmoved cars, the wrong signature." Carver shook his head, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I know, but you need to stop." In June, the case's final report went to Cook County. Typed, it concluded, "No evidence of crime found. Location or status of Charles and Evelyn Danner. Undetermined, recommend transfer to unresolved missing person." Hall read the paper repeatedly, feeling like he was watching someone buried alive in bureaucratic lines. He kept contact with Michael Danner. The young man left Oak Park that summer, saying he wanted a fresh start in Missouri. When hoped if he'd heard from his parents, Michael gave a faint smile. "No, but I believe they're fine." No anger, no fear, just an almost unnatural calm. Hall watched him drive off from the station lot, the engine's hum fading into the wind. He knew as the car vanished down the road, the last hope went with it. The rest of the year, the Danner case sank amid new reports. A missing girl in Des Plaines, an armed robbery in Cicero. Everything was more urgent, louder. No one mentioned the middle-aged couple lost in last year's snow. Only Hall, passing Maple Avenue, still glanced at the red brick house now locked, windows dust-covered. In his memory, he heard the fireplace's crackle and saw its glow through the curtains, as if that November night never ended. In October 1981, late one afternoon, Hall received a transfer notice. The thin file in a yellow folder was stamped red, "Case file closed. Oak Park PD." He signed it, staring at the smudged ink. Every case, even unanswered, needed an administrative end. He opened his old notebook, writing one last line before closing it. If there was a crime here, it was hidden well, and the hider knew we'd tire quickly. That evening, leaving the station, snow began falling again. Tiny white flakes clung to his coat, melting fast, leaving cold seeping through the thick fabric. He paused on the steps, watching the yellow streetlight glow on the wet road. In his mind he saw the Danner house, Fireplace dead, kitchen silent, clock stuck at 9:42. No calls, no alarms, just heavy silence like frozen earth. Somewhere under Chicago's snow, he believed something waited to be found, but no one wanted to dig anymore. In 1982, Michael Danner left Chicago. No one knew exactly where he went, only that a temporary residency form came from a small Missouri post office months later. Neighbors said an old truck picked him up with a few boxes, then vanished southwest on the highway. The red brick house on Maple Avenue was foreclosed by the bank a year later. Windows sealed, a Pharrell sign tilted in the overgrown yard. The neighborhood forgot the Danners as if they never existed. Only Sergeant Raymond Holt, driving by after shifts, stared at the dark house in winter, thinking of unanswered questions. In August 1983, Hull was reassigned to another unit. On his desk, he kept only the worn leather notebook and a 1979 photo of the Danner family. Charles in a plaid shirt, arm around his wife. Michael behind, faint smile, distant eyes. Holt framed it in silver, storing it in a drawer. He never spoke of the case, but never forgot it. The years passed. Chicago changed. New highways opened. Neighborhoods expanded. New cases flooded in daily. Bank robberies, drugs, gangs. In the Cook County Police storage, old files sat on iron shelves. Yellowed paper, typed letters fading. On the fifth row, bottom shelf file #MP8147 lay wedged among hundreds of missing persons cases. Thin enough to miss if not careful. The text case file closed. Oak Park PD slanted. Holt's faint handprint now brown at the edge. Time moved on. Investigators retired or passed away. No one recalled Charles and Evelyn Danner except Hull. He retired in 1995, moving to a small apartment near the Des Plaines River, keeping an old dog and reading the morning paper. Sometimes he clipped articles on similar cases, filing them in a box labeled like Danner case, no bodies identified. When asked why he still cared, Holt smiled because they haven't been buried. By the early 2000s, Chicago modernized the Cook County Sheriff's Office, launched the Digital Archive Initiative digitizing old files. Boxes were shipped to a new storage center in North Lawndale. File #8147 was flagged, its evidence checked. A young technician, Samuel Ortiz, noted, "Fireplace ash sample seal intact, nylon bag in good condition." No one knew that brief note would become a key 30 years later. Outside, Chicago changed daily. Old neighborhoods razed. Rail lines expanded, factories demolished. No one thought truth buried for 35 years would surface from those grounds. Then on the morning of March 12, 2015, with fog thick over South Chicago's industrial area, rail workers replacing rotted steel beams near the Kell River hit something hard a meter down, the scoop clanging sharply. The operator stopped, signaling colleagues to dig by hand. They unearthed the box-like object, suitcase-sized, heavy with rust. At first they thought it was old electrical equipment, but closer inspection revealed faded letters on the lid. CD. A worker pried it open, releasing a smell of rust and damp earth. Inside were bone fragments, charred cloth scraps, and a cracked watch. The site supervisor called police. Within 40 minutes the area was sealed. Illinois State Forensics arrived, photographing, measuring, and bagging the object in heavy plastic. At the Illinois State Forensic Lab, Dr. Elaine Porter and her team analyzed the bones, cleaned and DNA tested in deep cold. The 35-year degradation left little genetic material, but 2015 technology recovered enough. Entered into COTUS, the results showed a 97.8% match with Helen Danner, Charles's sister, who'd submitted DNA in 1994 to find her brother. Dr. Reporters stared at the screen, telling a colleague, "We just opened an old door." The news reached Cook County's cold case unit, file #MP8147, dormant for over 30 years, returned to the investigation table. Sergeant Natalie Ree took charge. Opening the box, she saw yellowed reports. Holt's blue ink handwriting scrolled on margins. Amidst them, a black and white photo of the missing couple, Charles in his railroad police uniform, Evelyn smiling, eyes squinting in sunlight. In the pile was a small nylon bag, its faded label reading Evidence 11A Fireplace Ashes, collected by Sergeant Holt. Holt had said in a 2010 call that ash was never tested. Reese read the old reports for 2 days straight. Holt's concise, steely notes. No break-in signs, suspected bloodstain wiped. No bodies, suspected forged note. She sighed softly. 35 years ago it wasn't enough for charges. But now a watch-engraved CD and matching DNA turned a missing persons case into murder. On March 17th, Reed drove to suburban Des Plaines, where Hall, now 82, lived in a small apartment near the river. He opened the door, thin but straight-backed, hair fully white. On the living room table, the Danner family photo sat in its silver frame, lightly dusted. When Ree introduced herself, Holt smiled faintly. Someone finally came back. She briefed him on the metal box. The DNA results. He went quiet, staring out the window at the grey water under weak sunlight. Then voice, I knew it. I knew that ash was never tested. They could have been killed in their own home. We didn't have the tools to prove it. Ree opened the file, showing him the forensic report copy. Hall put on glasses, reading slowly. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes lit up, not with satisfaction but deep sadness. Charles was a good man, he said. Lived for discipline and honor. Evelyn was kind. They didn't vanish because they wanted to. If Michael is alive, you have to find him. Reese nodded. That's what I plan to do. Before leaving, she glanced around the small room. Old photos lined the walls. Holt's career memories, one from 1979. Him before a patrol car, snow blurring the frame. Reese asked, Why keep this case's photo? Hall smiled. Because I never thought it was over. She nodded silently, said goodbye, and left. In the rear-view mirror, she saw him at the door, hands in his coat pockets, watching until her car disappeared. That evening, Ree returned to the cold case unit's basement office in Cook County's old building. She spread out the evidence. The metal box, watch bone fragments, and Holt's ash bag. 11A yellow light glinted off the rusted metal. She wrote in her log, March 17, 2015. Received file MP8147. Danner missing persons case 1980. DNA matches victim's family evidence. A 1 metal box with bones. Evidence a 2 fireplace ash. Hypothesis. Victims killed at home, likely perpetrator family member. Outside spring rain mixed with melting. Snow looked out the window, thinking of the old man keeping that photo. For 3 decades and 2 names forgotten in storage, the case was no longer missing persons. It had woken from a 35-year sleep. 3 days after meeting Holt, Sergeant Natalie Ree requested urgent analysis of the ash sample, Evidence 11A, collected from the Danner fireplace in 1980. The nylon bag was sent by secure transport to the Illinois State Forensic Lab in Springfield, equipped with cutting-edge biological analyzers. For 35 years, the bag remained unopened. Holt's blue ink seal, dated November 21, 1980, was faded but legible. Ree stood by as technicians broke the seal. Fine grey dust puffed out, glinting like glass specks under the light. She whispered, Careful. This might be their last voice. The ash was divided, fine powder, metal fragments, and unidentified bits. Dr. Porter, who analyzed the South Chicago box, oversaw the process. She loaded a vial into a mass spectrometer, explaining to Ree, We're looking for calcium phosphate, human bones foundation. If found, we'll try extracting DNA from any burned tissue. Ree nodded, gripping her notebook. The machine hummed silently, only its motors' soft buzz and green Elliott flashes breaking the quiet. After 2 hours, the screen showed initial results. Traces of calcium, collagen, and fatty acids typical of human tissue. Dr. Porter inhaled sharply. No doubt this isn't just wood ash. Among the fragments were 3 microscopic bone shards, smaller than rice grains, showing porous bone structure, under an electron microscope with burn marks from over 1000 degrees C, only possible in a confined oxygen-rich fire. A scorched cotton fiber chemically tested match dye from women's Sears sweaters of the late 1970s. Ree stared at the printout, saying softly, "Evelyn." Dr. Porter nodded. She extracted DNA from the bone fragments overnight. The next morning, she brought the results to Ree. 99.3% match with Helen Danner's sample. The Sister Ree stood still, eyes fixed on the number. She said quietly, "We just found Evelyn." At noon, Ree held a small meeting in the cold case unit office. On the table were photos of the metal box, with Charles Danner's bones next to the fireplace. "Ash DNA report." She pointed to the projected results. "One match for Charles, one for Evelyn. Now," she said, "this isn't a missing persons case anymore. We have 2 murders." The room fell silent, only the ventilation fan humming. A young investigator asked, "You sure, Sergeant? Could the ash be contaminated?" Ree looked at him, voice firm. "The sample was sealed, unopened since 1980. DNA doesn't grow after 30 years. This is direct evidence." In the official report to the Cook County Chief, she wrote, "March 23, 2015. Analysis of evidence 11A confirms DNA of victim Evelyn Danner burned in home fireplace, combined with metal box containing Charles Danner's remains found in South Chicago. This is confirmed as a double homicide from November 1980. That afternoon, Reese drove to Oak Park, stopping at the old Danner house, now repainted with new windows. The red brick chimney remained. She stood on the overgrown path looking up, picturing November 15th scene. Firelight through curtains, thin smoke from the chimney and snowy wind. A deceptively peaceful image. In her mind, Holt's notes came alive. Warm ash, strange burn smell. 35 years ago, he was right. No one believed him. Back at the office, reprinted a new order. File MP 147. Status changed from missing persons to double homicide. The paper was clipped into the old yellow folder with a new line in black ink. Reopened 2015. Natalie Ree. Most office lights were off, only her screen's glow reflecting on the desk. She wrote the day's final log entry. "We have 2 victims, 1 crime scene and 1 person still unnamed. He's lived 35 years as if nothing happened." Outside, March snow had melted. Light rain fell on wet pavement, yellow streetlights smearing like ash from an old chimney. Ree closed her eyes, imagining 2 people, one buried in cold earth, one burned in their home's familiar fire. The clues had returned, and Chicago would no longer call them missing. In August 2015, nearly 5 months after reopening file MP 8147, Sergeant Natalie Ree received a report from the Social Security Administration. Charles and Evelyn Danner's Social Security numbers were illegally used in the early 1980s to open an account in Missouri under Mark Daniels. The account holder's birth year was 1952, matching Michael Danner's driver's license data. Showed a silver-haired man, long face, dark eyes, narrow nose. No doubt it was the son who reported his parents missing 35 years ago. Ree sent the information to Springfield, Missouri police, where Mark Daniels owned a small garage repairing trucks and generators. Tax records showed him living alone. No criminal record, no family, in a 2-story wooden house behind maple trees in the city's south suburbs. One August morning, Missouri Task Force and Illinois Cold Case Unit began surveillance. For 2 days they watched the man, worked regularly, kept to himself, drank beer on his porch at night, listening to an old radio. He seemed an ordinary aging mechanic until the arrest warrant was signed. At 6:40 a.m. on August 14th, 3 police cars entered the quiet Sunshine Street neighborhood. As the loudspeaker demanded he exit, Mark Daniels opened the door, hands half raised, half lowered, face eerily calm. Sergeant Ree stepped forward, reading aloud, "You're under arrest for first-degree murder of Charles and Evelyn Danner, committed in Oak Park, Illinois, 1980. He looked at her, eyes flickering once, then said softly, "Voice, I knew this day would come. Inside the house, investigators searched. The space was tidy, shelves lined with neatly arranged tools. In a corner, a utility knife sat in a wooden box, blade gleaming, handle worn. On a desk was an old framed photo, a family, father, mother, young son, yellowed but recognizable as Charles and Evelyn. Ree flipped it over, finding faint pen text. Maple Avenue, 1979. In a metal drawer, they found a rustic .22 caliber ammo box, half empty, and a handgun shell with no serial number. All were sealed on sight. Ree paced the room slowly. On the desk, a wall calendar had Inspection Monday scrolled. Bookshelves held auto repair manuals mixed with old albums. She paused at a photo of a young man by a silver Ford Ltd Illinois plate sanded off. A chill ran down her spine. He kept the past like a collection, she told an officer. And that past is the crime scene. At the Springfield station in the interrogation room, the man stayed calm. He confirmed his real name was Michael Danner, but refused to say more. Asked about the metal box found in South Chicago, he only said, "I don't want to lie anymore, but I don't want to remember either." Ree stared silently for 5 minutes, then said, "You've had 35 years to forget. Now it's our turn to remember for you." That afternoon, Chicago media erupted with the news. The Chicago Tribune's front page blared a bold headline, "Son arrested in 35-year-old cold case." Below a black and white photo, the caption read, "Michael Danner, now living in Missouri, has Mark Daniels, charged with murdering his parents, Charles and Evelyn Danner, in 1980. Case reopened after discovery of a metal box containing remains and new DNA evidence." TV stations aired footage of the red brick house in Oak Park, where red and blue lights once flashed on the snow that year. The news spread quickly across the city. Old Maple Avenue residents, those who once thought the disappearance was a storm accident, gathered silently before grocery store TVs. An elderly woman whispered, "That boy was so polite back then." Who'd have thought? In the Cook County Archive, technicians paused, glancing at each other as the case name lit up the digital board. One smiled, tapping the digitized file. "Oh, you were right. In Des Plaines." When Ree called with the news, Raymond Holt's voice trembled but held firm. "I live to hear this. I've waited 35 years. He didn't ask for details, only sighed. "Finish it, please. Don't let them die again on paper." That night, Ree returned to her hotel, opening her laptop to review search photos. The knife, ammo box, family picture, all silent yet heavy. Outside, rain poured on the quiet street, wind rattling the glass, evoking the 1980 snow she'd read about in the file. She wrote in her investigation log, August 14, 2015, "Arrested Michael Danner, 63, in Springfield, Missouri. Evidence seized. Utility knife, .22 ammo box. Danner family photo. Suspect confirmed identity. Did not resist. Sole statement. I knew this day would come." As she closed the notebook, the clock neared midnight. Somewhere hundreds of miles away in the old Maple Avenue house, summer wind slipped through door cracks, faintly rattling a window like the sigh of two people finally named. 3 days after his arrest, Michael Danner was led into the Springfield Police Department's interrogation room. The small space had gray walls, harsh white light glaring on a scratched metal table. On it, Sergeant Natalie Ree placed a water cup and a thick file. He sat across, hands loosely cuffed, dark eyes eerily calm. The interrogation began at 9 a.m., fully recorded. Ree started evenly, without pressure. "We need you to tell us what happened in November 1980 in Oak Park, Illinois." Michael stared at the table, voice, "It was an accident. I didn't kill anyone." Ree nodded slightly, not countering yet. "Explained that. Dad slipped. The gun went off. I panicked. I just wanted to clean up. Didn't want Mom to see." "What do you mean by clean up?" "Bury him. Burn stuff. I don't remember." Reese slid a photo across the metal box with remains and the CD watch. "This isn't stuff," she said slowly. Michael looked, face unchanged. "I was wrong," he said. "I just wanted to hide it. Didn't want to hurt Mom." reopened the file, placing DNA reports before him, one by one. She turned one to face him. Bold text reading. DNA match 99.3% with Helen Danner. Below was a photo of the fireplace ash bag. "This is your mother," Ree said. "In your house's fireplace." The room fell silent. Michael blinked faintly, then looked away. After a pause, he asked, "Where'd you find it?" "Right where you lit the fire," Ree replied. "You want me to believe that was an accident too?" He stayed silent for a long time. The recorder clicked softly. Finally, he exhaled deeply, whispering, "It wasn't an accident." Ree sat up straight. "What did you say?" "It wasn't an accident," he repeated, voice weary. Dad found out everything. He began fragmented at first, then clearer. In October 1980, Charles Danner demanded Michael's college transcripts and internship papers. Michael forged documents, faking an email from an insurance company to deceive his father. But Charles, a former cop, spotted inconsistencies and contacted the school. "He knew I lied," Michael said, staring at the table. "I took money from their account, withdrew $35,000. He said he'd turn me in, make me pay." On the night of November 15th, father and son argued fiercely. Evelyn tried to intervene but failed. Michael recalled, "He called me a failure, a disgrace. I lost control." As Charles turned away, Michael grabbed his father's .22 handgun from the cabinet, loaded it. "I just wanted to scare him." "Quiet," he said, voice shaking, but he turned back. I pulled the trigger. The first shot hit Charles's back and he fell. Evelyn screamed, rushing over, tripping by the table. I still hear the wall clock fall, its hand breaking. It was 9:42, Reese shivered. Holt's old file noted. The clock stopped at that exact time. Michael continued, "I was terrified. I knew I couldn't hide both, but Mom wouldn't stop crying. She said she'd go to the police. I stopped thinking. I just remember the smoke." Per his confession, he dragged his father's body to the garage, wrapped it in plastic tarp, drove to an old rail yard in South Chicago where he'd worked as a student, and buried it under steel beams. He returned near dawn. Evelyn sat in the kitchen holding the phone. She asked, "What did you do to Dad?" I said, "I'm sorry. Then I don't know how I lit the fire." He closed his eyes tightly. The flames rose fast. I sat in the house, hearing it crackle, frozen. When it was done, I opened the window, the burnt smell clinging to me. Reyes listened silently, writing each word. She asked, "What next?" I cleaned the floor, wiped the blood, wrote the fake note, locked the door, and reported them missing. Yes, I thought it'd be perfect. Everyone would believe they went to Michigan. Reyes stared long. "How did you live these 35 years? "Like someone else," he replied. "Changed my name, worked, fixed cars. Every time I lit a fireplace, I saw their faces. I knew this day would come." When the interrogation ended, Michael signed a 14-page confession, his handwriting shaky but clear. On the final page, below his and Reese's signatures, was a bold conclusion: intentional homicide with concealment. Reese stared at the paper. She thought of Hall's 1981 report. If there was a crime here, it was hidden. Well, 35 years later, the crime had revealed itself. As guards led Michael out, he paused at the door, asking softly, "Do you think I can be forgiven?" Reese replied quietly, eyes on the file. "Forgiving isn't my job. My job is to remember." That evening, she sent the final electronic report to the prosecutor's office. The subject line read, "Case solved. Danner outside." Rain mixed with thunder. Lightning flashing through the window, illuminating the cuffed man walking down the long hallway. His shadow stretching, then vanishing into the dark. After Michael Banner signed his confession, Sergeant Natalie Ree sent the full file and evidence to the Illinois State Forensic Lab for final verification. She wanted a closed chain of evidence, not just reliant on a killer's words, but data that could outlast memory. Over the next weeks, the forensic team conducted a comprehensive analysis of 2 sample sets: the metal box with remains from South Chicago and the fireplace ash from the Danner house. Goals confirmed the two victims, determine time of death, and identify weapon traces. When the metal box was reopened in a sterile lab, technicians carefully poured black soil and bone fragments onto a stainless steel tray. Fluorescent light glinted off the bone's dull ivory sheen. They counted over 200 microscopic bone pieces from half a centimeter to a few millimeters, all with white burn marks on the edges, evidence of high heat exposure. Mixed in was a distorted bra underwire caked with dirt and ash, typical of women's clothing from the late 1970s. Near the box's bottom was a small, flat lead fragment, a .22 bullet head. The expert noted instantly. Burn trajectory and bone fracture analysis showed the male victim, Charles Danner, was shot twice from behind at under 2 NR. The bullet path angled upward, piercing the 8th rib, shattering the spine. The injury map matched Michael's confession. "I shot when he turned away," comparing the bullet head to the rusted .22 ammo box from Michael's Missouri home, confirmed a match in alloy and rifling marks. Also, the team found a dismantled .22 handgun hidden in an old exhaust pipe in the Springfield garage. Its serial number was filed off, but acid etching revealed Sayusundin 752. Records from 1978 showed it was registered to Charles Danner, legally bought at a Chicago gun shop. Clear evidence Michael used his father's gun to kill him. Concurrently, the DNA team cross-checked the box and ash samples. Despite heavy degradation, both matched at 17 stri forensic concordance. Sample A1 confirmed male, matching Charles's sister's DNA. Sample A2 confirmed female, matching Evelyn's sister's DNA. Dr. Porter, lead examiner, wrote, "Forensic analysis confirms remains belong to 2 related individuals corresponding to missing couple, Charles and Evelyn Danner. Burn and injury patterns align with suspect's confession. No third P-party DNA detected." Additionally, the chemistry team found paraffin and industrial alcohol traces in the fireplace. Ash solvents common in mechanic garages, matching the gas and oil samples from the 1980 floor. This proved deliberate burning, not accident or chance. Ree sat in the observation room as Dr. Porter projected a 3D skull reconstruction of the male victim. The face emerged, features sharpening square jaw, high nose nearly identical to Charles's old photo. Ree swallowed hard, a lump in her throat. "He turned back after the first shot," Porter said softly. "The second ended it." Reese only nodded, silent. The final report, over 200 pages, bore the State Forensic Lab's red stamp. The conclusion read, "Cause of death, 2 gunshot wounds from behind, .22 caliber. Evidence of deliberate fire using flammable solvents. DNA from both samples matches Danner family relatives. Estimated time of death, evening November 15, 1980. Reading the conclusion, Ree froze. 35 years of investigation. Scattered clues now formed a seamless chain. Father shot, mother burned in one night, one house by their son's hand. The circle closed, cold and ruthlessly perfect. That afternoon she visited Holt's old Des Plaines home. He was frail but followed the news. Ree handed him the forensic report copy, saying softly, "It's all confirmed." Hall read each page, eyes wet in the sunset light. "I wrote in my report," he said slowly, "that if there was a crime, it was well hidden. They hid it for 35 years. He paused, closing the file gently. "But earth and ash don't lie." As Ree left, afternoon sun slanted through trees, golden dust on the path. She paused, looking at the gray sky, thinking the case was done. Nothing left to find. Every clue, wound and word aligned. The final logic closed, and with it the darkest part of a 1980 winter was finally named in the light. In May 2016, Cook County Courthouse buzzed from early morning. The trial, the state of Illinois versus Michael Danner, opened 36 years after his parents vanished. Outside, Chicago TV crews lined the entrance. Locals gathered on cold stone steps, holding papers with bold headlines. Son faces trial in 35-year-old double murder. In courtroom 4B, the air was thick. Every chair creak cut through the silence like a blade. Michael Danner, 64, silver hair cropped short, sat at the defense table. He wore a pale blue shirt, cuffs hidden under a jacket, his eyes cloudy but unflinching. At the prosecution table was State Attorney William Crane, a calm, middle-aged man with cold case experience. Beside him sat Sergeant Natalie Rhee, key prosecution witness. Defense was Raymond Doyle, court-appointed thin with a soft but sharp voice. Presiding Judge Ellen Wexler opened firmly. "We are here for the deaths of Charles and Evelyn Danner. Oak Park, 1980. The defendant faces 8 charges, including first-degree murder and concealment of bodies. The trial begin." Prosecutor Crane stood. "Opening, Your Honor. This case was buried by time, but justice, though late, arrives. For 35 years, truth hid under ash and earth. Now science speaks for the dead." His voice steady. He displayed forensic images. The metal box ash DNA results. "This is DNA matching the Danner family. This is Charles Danner's .22 gun, found in the defendant's garage. This is financial evidence of motive-forged signatures, claimed insurance $35,000 withdrawn." 2 days after the disappearance, Reese took the stand, recounting the reinvestigation, the metal box discovery, ash analysis, the arrest day. Her voice slow, steady, each word heavy, asked by the prosecution. "Sergeant, what makes this no longer a missing persons case?" Rhee answered, "DNA. Evelyn's ash was found in the fireplace of the home. Her son reported to police. No one vanishes leaving their ash in the kitchen." Defense Attorney Doyle objected. "No living witnesses. No one saw Mr. Danner pull the trigger. No one saw him light the fire." The judge nodded, allowing rebuttal. Doyle faced the jury, voice low. "You're asked to believe what? A pile of ash? DNA possibly contaminated after 30 years. You can't convict a man when no one's left to talk." Prosecutor Crane stepped forward. "Calm counsel's right. No living witnesses, but evidence doesn't die. DNA doesn't forget. Earth doesn't forget. Fire doesn't forget. Every bone fragment, every burned fat drop, every forged signature says the same. He killed his parents." He turned to Rhee. "Can science be wrong?" "Not at 99.3%. Next, Dr. Elaine Porter, lead forensic expert, testified. She detailed the analysis over 200 bone fragments, a bra underwire, 22 bullet marks matching the ammo at Michael's house. As the jury saw the images, some bowed heads. One woman covered her mouth, Porter said. "Injuries show 2 shots from behind less than 2 meters away. Could Mr. Danner be that shooter?" "No doubt, all evidence points to him." The defendant was allowed to speak. Michael stood, hands trembling, facing the jury. "I was wrong," he said, voice. "But I'm not a monster. I was scared. Dad wanted me jailed for lying. I lost everything. I didn't think it would go that far." Doyle touched his shoulder, signaling him to sit. A long silence hung, broken only by the clerk's pen tapping. In final arguments, Doyle tried to sway. "This is a confession coerced by time and guilt. A man living in remorse might take blame for faded memories." "Consider that," Crane countered. 35 years didn't blur the crime, only gave him 35 years free. No one forced his confession. The truth did. After 6 days of trial, 82 pieces of physical evidence were presented, and 21 witnesses testified. Hull, now 83, was too frail to attend, but sent a recorded statement. His voice echoed in the courtroom, hoarse but steady. "If there was a crime here, it was hidden well, but the earth spoke for me." Those words silenced many. On May 23rd, Judge Wexler instructed the jury, "You must decide based on evidence, not emotion." They left for deliberation at 3:12 p.m. Outside, light rain tapped the windows. Rhee sat in the front row, clutching her notebook. 2 hours and 15 minutes later, the jury returned. No one spoke as the clerk stood to read the verdict, voice clear. On the charge of first-degree murder, guilty. On the charge of first-degree murder, guilty. On the charge of concealing a body, guilty. On the charges of forging documents, insurance fraud, and obstructing investigation, guilty. All 8 counts. All guilty. Michael Danner bowed his head, eyes closed. No reaction. Re-exhaled, feeling a void close for the first time in months. Judge Wexler said the court finds the defendant guilty of first-degree murder and concealment of bodies. Sentencing will occur in June. The gavel struck 3 times, its echo heavy in the large room. Outside, reporters crowded again. One asked Ree, "Is justice too late?" She replied briefly, "It's never too late, just too quiet." That evening, back at the cold case unit, Ree opened the old file, looking at the cover. Case file Hamzra MPP 8147, reopened 2015. She took a pen, writing beneath, closed 2016, guilty on all counts. Then she closed it, placed it in a drawer. Outside, May wind blew, carrying Lake Michigan's chill and rain scent. 36 years later, light finally shone on a case buried in ash, and this time it wouldn't fade. On the morning of June 28, 2016, Cook County courtroom was packed again. Michael Danner's sentencing, nearly 6 weeks after the guilty verdict on all 8 counts, drew a crowd. White light streamed through high windows, illuminating the 64-year-old's tired face in an orange jumpsuit. Beside him, lawyer Raymond Doyle stayed silent. He knew nothing could change. In the front row, Sergeant Natalie Ree and cold case unit members watched quietly. Some reporters, notebooks in hand, waited for the final lines to close a case that shook Chicago. Judge Ellen Wexler entered, voice low and clear. Cook County Court, Illinois. Case 16, ICE 204, sentences Michael Danner. She paused, flipping through the thick file, then continued. After reviewing all evidence, testimony, and the jury's verdict, the court finds the defendant guilty of first-degree murder of Charles and Evelyn Danner, concealment of bodies, forging documents, and insurance fraud. The penalties are prescribed by Illinois law. The defendant is sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. The room was still. Only the rustle of pages and the clock's pen tapping sounded. Michael looked up, grey eyes expressionless. Judge Wexler addressed him. "Before the sentence is recorded, the court offers you a final chance to speak. Do you wish to say anything?" A long silence followed. Michael inhaled deeply, scanning the courtroom. Strange faces, camera lights, and his parents' old photo on the evidence screen. He spoke slowly, voice. "I just didn't want them to see me fail." A few in the gallery frowned. The judge asked, "Who?" Michael replied, eyes fixed on the photo. "My parents. My whole life. I tried to prove I could be something, but I wasn't. It started with fear, and fear killed them." No one spoke further. The judge nodded, signaling the officers to escort the defendant. As 2 guards cuffed and led him away, Michael turned back once. Window light hit his silver hair, highlighting a worn, empty face. The final image of the son who stunned Chicago. Post-sentencing, headlines read, "Michael Danner, life sentence, no parole. Subheading, cold case 1980, closed after 35 years. TV news replayed the prison van leaving, rolling slowly past onlookers. Inside, Michael bowed his head, eyes closed. No one knew his thoughts. Some said he cried. Others said he sat still, as if finally resting after a half-life of running. That fall, Raymond Holt passed away at his Des Plaines home. He died in his sleep at 83. When former colleagues cleared his apartment, they found the Danner family photo beside his worn leather notebook, its edges frayed by time. The notebook's last line in shaky but clear script, "Justice delayed is still justice," on the first page from 1981. If there was a crime here, it was hidden well. Now it was hidden no more. In December, the cold case unit submitted its final report to the prosecutor's office. On the old yellow cover of file Hemp 8147, a red stamp read, "Case solved after 35 years. Below, Reese's signature and a note, "Case closed with life sentence for Michael Danner." Victims Charles and Evelyn Danner identified via DNA identity and evidence file transferred to permanent archive. That afternoon, Reese carried the file alone to Cook County's archive basement. The long hallway glowed with dim yellow light, air-cold. She placed the file in the middle closed case's 2016 shelf. As the heavy iron cabinet shut, the sound was sharp, much like what Holt heard 35 years earlier when he first stored the case. Reese stood a moment touching the cold metal, whispering, "Done." That evening she drove past Lake Michigan. The radio mentioned the case briefly before switching to weather. Late sunset light spilled over the water, wind carrying early summer's chill. Reese thought of Hall, the old photo, the two consumed by fire in that house. She felt no triumph, only quiet. In this job no ending was beautiful, just final. In display planes, Hall was buried beside his wife, his small headstone engraved at Coligou's request. Raymond Hall, the man who didn't forget. Chicago resumed its daily rhythm, the Danner case resting in its cabinet, discreet and complete. 35 years from 1980's snow to the iron doors, close condensed into one administrative note. Simple yet heavy. Case solved after 35 years. The Danner case is not just a tragedy of a 1980 Chicago family, but a mirror for today's American society, where technology, justice, and memory continually converse. 35 years on, DNA technology, national databases, and efforts from units like Reese's cold case team proved time cannot bury truth. But beyond evidence lies something deeper. How people face mistakes and fear. Michael Danner killed his parents not from hatred, but from an obsession with being seen as a failure, chasing a false honor through deceit. In a modern society where pressures of success, education, and status weigh heavily, this story warns, when people fear admitting truth or losing face, they can lose themselves, sometimes literally. Yet, this story also reminds us of persistence and faith in justice. Holt and those quietly preserving files for decades embody core American values. Never give up. Never let silence be the answer. In an era where information flashes by, truth still needs patient listeners. As Reese said, no evidence stays silent forever. It just waits for the right listener. In today's America, where technology illuminates the darkest corners, what we must preserve is not just data, but the spirit of not forgetting for others and our own conscience. Thank you for following this 3-decade investigation, where justice finally spoke amid Chicago's white snow. Subscribe to the channel to catch more true crime stories, where the past never truly sleeps.